Right, so thanks everybody, online and face-to-face. I'm Elizabeth Thomson and I'm paper number 3. So we've looked at a bit of building our understanding of peace, compassion, and I'm going to finish off with empathy. We'll look at definitions in the same way that the previous 2 speakers have done, and I'll show you some concordancing. I think empathy is always sitting in contrast to sympathy, so I've done a little bit of investigation in that. I'll look at the collocates, and then I'll look at what is empathy as a social semiotic act, and what is empathy as a part of the grammar, I suppose, is the way I'm looking at it. And the idea is, as in this SIG, what is it that we're interested in? And these 3 papers are designed to kind of give us a foundation. This is what we understand these concepts are in the grammar, and this is what we understand these concepts are as a form of social behaviour. A beautiful Hallidayan sense. Okay, so definitions. I'll go through them quickly. No, I probably have to read this. So Macquarie says it's a mental entering into the feeling or spirit of a person or thing, appreciative perception or understanding. And interestingly, they note that the adjective of empathy is empathic, and then they compare it to empathetic, which they make the comment it's a combination of empathy and sympathy, which was something that we were interested in. Why empathic and empathetic? Is there a difference? So in the Macquarie, they bring up that difference. So I didn't move it on. And that matches more or less what the other person feels or is expected to feel, and that has as its object the other person. So I thought that was interesting between the clinical and the philosophical, that in the clinical it was understanding somebody's feeling state, sharing their emotion, where in the philosophical it was the object of the empathy is the other person. And then I'm very interested in a mode of empathy, and it's a communication framework called nonviolent communication, and it's been developed by an American educational psychologist called Marshall Rosenberg, and he defines empathy as a respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. Notice he doesn't say sharing, a respectful understanding, which requires us to focus full attention on the other person's message. We give to others the time and space they need to express themselves fully and to be understood. So I guess there's some interesting slight shifts between this mode of communication versus a philosophical view versus clinical versus dictionary. So that brings us to sympathy. And in the Macquarie Dictionary, so looking just at sympathy, is the fact or the power of entering into the feelings of another, especially in sorrow or trouble, fellow feeling, compassion or commiseration. Whereas in the clinical definition, sympathy is seen as an automatic emotive response devoid of self-reflection. It describes the listener's feelings, but not an understanding or sharing of the patient's emotions. So sympathy seems to be more about an emotional reaction in the person who's listening to somebody who's wanting empathy, but they respond with their own emotions. And the philosophical dimension, sympathy is an emotion directed towards another's welfare, but is rarely similar to the emotion the person feels. According to the psychological literature, sympathy either involves or causes altruistic motivation to help those in need. So there's an interesting place to play there between compassion, empathy, compassion, sympathy. And then in the nonviolent world of Marshall Rosenberg, he talks about sympathy is when we listen with sympathy, we listen to what the other person has to say, and we reflect back by telling how the story made us feel, sorry about that typo, how we understand what the person is going through and feels based on our own experience. and in other literature that's NVC inspired, sympathy contains a quality of pity that is marked by separation and a reluctance to encounter another's pain. Okay, so then with that little mess in my head, what is the difference? I moved to seeing what it was like in the concordancing world. And as with Auni, I used the coronavirus corpus because there was an expectation that we might find the word empathy present there, and it's a big corpus. And I did 2 studies, mostly as I was learning, but in terms of frequency and the class, in the first study, in looking at the frequency, what I discovered is that the noun empathy is 68%, which I think is interesting with yours, Ingrid, that you're about that as well. Empathetic as an adjective, 17%. Empathize as a verb, 0.5%, and then it went down. So you can see empathize S, empathize Z, and then as an adjective, way down, 0.02%. And then when I looked at on the 27th, I noticed with a separate concordance, because every time you go into the concordance, it changes because it's updated. So it took me a while to get used to that. But anyway, the nouns were 85%, adjectives 12.5%, and verbs 2.5%. And then in another study, nouns 77.5%, adjectives 20%, and then verbs 1.25%. And don't knows were 1.25 because I couldn't tell, there wasn't enough examples. Okay, so, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't put there were the numbers, sorry about that. Okay, then I looked at the semantic roles following along the lines of Auni and Ingrid, and these are in order of frequency. So empath as an attribute was first, then it followed on as a goal, a value, carrier, and then phenomena. In fact, the carrier phenomena were equal in the first search. I only had 2 tokens, and I was looking at 80 lines of verbs. And then in the second August study, or I went in again and had a look. What I got was pretty much the same: attribute followed by value followed by goal instead of attribute, goal, value, and only 1 token of the verb. So clearly, relational process is alive. Okay, so here are some examples. Empathetic as a participant attribute. Empathic as a participant attribute. Empathy as a participant value, as a participant goal, participant carrier, participant actor, and then a thing in a circumstance of manner. Empathy as classifier in the nominal group. Empathy as adjective, as epithet in the nominal group. I kept up, yep. And then 2 examples of as a verb. So you can see that. And then I went on to look at the collocates and the company that empathy keeps. And in the closed set, the and of the 2 and 4 gave us a strong sense that we're living in the noun group. We'll find empathy's buddies in the noun group. And then the open set, what words go, what are the abstract nouns that empathy keeps its company with? Compassion and understanding, kindness, respect, skills, sympathy, love. And verbs that it's living around and with is have, are, show, need, sense, feel, relational and mental processes. And then what participants is it with? It, we, people, I, you, he, they, others. Interesting, not a lot of abstract references to people, just people in the example, which is something that has sparked me by Esther's talk earlier on, general and specific. Nice, interesting contrast. So yes, that is the kind of study of the word that I undertook. And then I got very interested in empathy as an act and went to the literature. There is Gabrina Pounds is a systemicist. East Anglican University has done quite a bit of research using appraisal study on empathy. So her paper was terrific. What she did is she took the work of some clinicians looking at teaching empathy in training and then laid over an appraisal analysis on their understanding of what good empathetic behaviours of clinicians looks like for training, which was very interesting. So basically the clinicians came up with this set of choices as a good empathetic clinician. And so it starts with the patient begins with telling them how they feel and what their views are. And in terms of, sorry, I thought they were going to come on at a time, but from Gabrina's work, she noticed that this was all about implicit and explicit negative feelings of affect, negative judgments, and negative appreciations. At which point the doctor has this option to go for empathy. They called it an empathy opportunity. You can take it or not, but it sits there. And some doctors just go straight to strategies to help, or identify treatment, or some doctors take this opportunity to engage with what's going on for them. And if they are, what's happening in the appraisal network is they elicit from the patients what they're feeling and what their views are. And there's this direct or indirect elicitation around affect, judgments, and appreciations. At which point the doctor then, or nurse or whoever it is, the clinician then makes a decision to follow 3 steps. And these steps are basically reiterating what they heard the patient say around their feelings and judgments and appreciations. And then there's an opportunity to either share the same experience or acknowledge that experience. And then there's a step where there's a moment of accepting their experience as real for them and somehow normalizing it in the sense that, it's perfectly reasonable to feel grief after the death of a loved one, and grief for different people manifests differently. So I'm letting you know that what you're feeling is normal. So there's this 3 stages of reiteration, affiliation, and normativity. And so it's the moment where in the doctor-patient dyad, there's a bridging to the person through an act of affiliation and solidarity, which connects the doctor or the clinician to the patient. So I thought this is not a clinician example, but it does demonstrate this person, the woman in this, yes, you can see that. I'll tell you to start it in a moment. Yeah, the woman is reflecting on how much she hates filling in her tax returns, and the person listening is going to give her empathy. Although this, I captured this in a Zoom recording and noticed that it demonstrated these features. So she's got a bit of a long spiel on why she hates taxes or filling out her tax return. And then there's a man who's listening, and he basically acknowledges what she says by reiterating what he thinks she was meaning. So not assuming he understands, but reiterating what he thinks he heard. And then he checks that that's what she wants. And then in that process, he's inquiring or asking her if he got it right. And then you can see from her perspective that he got it right, because she changes quite dramatically in her body language and then confirms. And then there's also quite a distinct physiological or somatic response on both their parts. You can see there was a coming together or a connection. So let's have a play. to turn that up. Okay, we might play from yours. Can you play from yours? Can't. Okay, we've just got a volume. Got to turn something up and turn something down.
You see that?
Oh, yeah.
More.
Yeah, okay.
More sounds.
Okay.
Thank you.
5 minutes, yeah. Thanks. Sorry. I'm sorry, I have no idea. Do you have the PowerPoint on the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's been.
Which computer is sharing the Zoom? Is sharing screen? So let's take a look at the
Yeah, somebody like to give me everything.
I understand how it feels.
I'm thinking about it and I wonder if some of my
coming out of that.
Can I look in the online here?
No, that's my microphone.
Can unmute this?
Yeah, that's good. We've got
resistance
That's a bit better.
isn't because, you know, this is something imposed on me. It's not really a commitment I made coming up. So some of it, I think, is my push and pull with choice in my life. I thought I'd have a lot more of it in my retirement than I do. And so some of it is, when I think about, you know, this really quite silly little example of the taxes, some of it is, well, I'm in process. I've done some of the steps. And so there's still some time. So I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to.
okay, let's can now.
Let's see. Second one. Turn that light on. Because that's clearly the problem. Is that now turned off?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try this one. Is that
Okay, so I'm
like that?
I'm not going to try and do the sound. I've just got another I've got another dialogue I can read, just in case we had a train crash. So, okay, so what I've got on the left of the screen is the affiliate. So the kind of what's happening in the social relationship between these two speakers. It's a husband and a wife, and the husband's upset about.
Sorry. Yeah.
Right. The husband's upset about what the son's been up to. And so on the left, you can see these 3 stages that the Pound's work brought to life from her research. So I'll just read this. So the mother says, I'd love to know what's going on for you in relation to Joe in the car. I want to understand. And then the father comes in, sure. when I got Joe's text on Sunday night requesting that I put more money in his account, I felt really confused because we've already given him the money for the car. And I guess when I prodded him, the story changed and I started to get suspicious. And it turns out that he was lying to us. He hasn't saved as much money as he said. I don't know what to say, but he was lying to us again. I feel really, I'm devastated. I'm just tired. I'm seriously tired of this. I'm angry that he would still lie to us. I don't get it. And then the wife reiterates. I'm really hearing the outrage and the shock when you think about the text from Joe asking for extra money which hadn't been agreed on. And when you think about wanting some honesty and hearing that his version of why he needed the money wasn't actually the truth, and the deep sadness that's here for you when he was caught out lying again. I'm hearing that you want some appreciation and respect for your support. Just honesty. Honesty, right. I'm hearing you're really wanting a different connection where you can rely on his words and his actions line up. Yes. Would you like an honest connection with Joe and some reassurance from him that this won't happen again? Yes. And then in the moment, there's this silence, a bit of a relief. And I'm really hearing that honesty matters. Yes. And there's more silence. And then the wife says, is there anything else you'd like me to hear? No, that's okay. So in the process, when this really happened, not in my rendering, you hear a difference in what's going on between what the emotional chargedness at the beginning and the settledness at the end. So I just wanted to make the point that, let's go back. I'm guessing, why can't I go backwards? Can I go backwards? Sorry about these IT problems. For those of you over there in cyber world, I'm imagining that this is tedious and that you're feeling anxious and nervous at this point, and that you would really like the technology to support this presentation. And so keep going back. There we go. That's it. Here we go. We've got a slide. Great. So what have I done? I'm not sure where I'm at in time, but I'm now concluding. So what we've got is a desire by us in the SIG to get a better understanding of these modalities in order to engage in social change, social activism, to move away from an adversarial construal of human relations to something that's about our common humanity and finding a way to bridge these the chasms of adversarialism that Esther so frighteningly presented today. I am still dealing with the shock of just the blatant adversarialism that sits there and the analysis, which was so beautiful. But back to bringing our common humanity together, empathy, the concordancing shows that empathy is an attribute or a goal or a value, mostly in the concordance experience, and that it's usually as a mental process of affect. That empathy is a dialogic act. It could be, in text, but slow talking text time or spoken text. But I would argue that on the basis of what the clinicians have demonstrated, what Marshall Rosenberg points out in his modality, and what Gabrina has done with bringing appraisal to their work, that empathy is a dialogic act, a social semiotic practice in which language is intentionally used to, one, interpret the semiotic cues of someone, client or patient or family member, requesting empathy, two, to elicit their feelings and needs or views, and three, to respond by reiterating, naming what's going on for them, affiliating with them by gesturing a sense of understanding and offering normative acceptance that like us all, there's a common experience here of a set of common human needs. And that this is all done through affect, judgment and appreciations which work to create or maintain a social connection, or in other words, a bond of solidarity. I just want to show you what Marshall says about peace. Peace requires something far more difficult than revenge or merely turning the other cheek. It requires empathizing with the fears and unmet needs that provide the impetus for people to attack each other. And on that note, I'll say I'm done. And so we've got plenty of time now for questions from cyberspace, from the onliners or from the audience, and questions for all three of us, whatever has come to mind.